Hello, Sooner Nation, OU Insider subscribers, Coach Bryan Clinton enthusiasts, people who are thankful that it is OU's bye week this week. I think that not only includes us and most of the fans, but also probably the team itself.
Yeah.
So everybody should be listening to this podcast because it is the latest episode of the Oklahoma Drill, a podcast fueled by OU Insider and the Rivals Network. I am Jesse Crittenden. I will never do that again. And I am joined, as always, by Sir Coach Esquire Bryan Clinton. Bryan, have you recovered from the long and arduous journey to Auburn, Alabama over the weekend? I'm still exhausted. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I feel like I haven't caught up on sleep just yet, but I think I'm going to be in I'll be in a constant state of limited sleep for a little while, just with everything going on at the house. But yeah, it would have been a lot longer car ride back had things not turned on their head in the fourth quarter. A lot more to think about, but yeah, it was a good trip. I honestly, the drive itself isn't really that bad. Um, I will say I did enjoy the scenery going to Provo more than I did uh, this route. But I think probably the one of the biggest things, and this is totally just like off kilter. Wanted to ask you this. Brandon made a comment in the car on the way, and it really stuck. It really stuck, and it was like, Oklahoma's played 5 games, or at this point. Oklahoma's played 4 games in the SEC. But I think it just hit me that Oklahoma's in the SEC because we were in SEC country. We were heading to Auburn, Alabama. We hit the state line to cross into Alabama, and it was like, wow, like Oklahoma is in the Southeastern Conference, and he was right. I mean, it really when you walked into Jordan Hare, it was different. It was cool. It was really, really cool.
Yeah, I had I think the Auburn trip really brought home that OU is in the SEC. I think even more so than Tennessee did. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to ride with you guys there and back.
Too cool for us, man.
I'm not going to bore everyone with the details, but let's say that I was supposed to fly on Friday, got spooked because of the weather, which obviously, thinking about all the people who have been devastated by the storms, me having to restructure my travel plans is the least of anybody's concerns with how bad the storm damage has been. But so that's a given. But from completely changing travel plans around to hopping in the car with John Hoover and Ryan Chapman, our friends over at Sooners on SI, to not having the chance to repack for a road trip as opposed to a plane ride, was an interesting travel experience for me. But we got there super early on Saturday. I think we rolled up at 9:30 a.m. for a 2:30 kick, and we just went and walked around the campus for a while.
How was that?
Auburn's campus is beautiful. Really, really cool. The tailgate and student stuff they do is awesome. Really, really cool. Again, no shade to any Big 12 schools, because Iowa State's cool. Kansas State is really cool. There are some cool traditions. Auburn was just different. And actually, it was walking around the campus. I was like, oh, man, I'm covering an SEC conference game.
Yeah.
Oklahoma's in the SEC. It hit me a lot more than the Tennessee game did.
We walked. So there's a shuttle.
Yeah.
I didn't know going in.
Okay. That process is brutal.
We
get better, Auburn.
Yes. Yeah. We did not use the shuttle going in. We did on the way out, and of course everybody's gone at that point, so it was just super easy. But I'm glad that we didn't use the shuttle because we walked, it was probably 3/4 of a mile. I would like, I mean, it was a long walk, but it was so cool. Like we had just gotten through the crowd of people whenever the Tiger Walk had started, and you could hear everybody behind us just kind of going nuts for them coming through. It man, it was just so cool. Like um, we saw Toomer's Corner, thought that
Hmm.
was really cool. Uh, I think that's just one of those things where you've got to see it with the toilet paper and the trees for it to really hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is a beautiful campus. You're right. Um, yeah, really cool. I honestly I can't wait for our next road trip. I'm ready to see some of these new traditions and break them in and see what the rest of the conference has in store. But really, really cool. Loved Auburn. Super like the fan base. I will say this, Oklahoma's fan base has made a very good impression with the Auburn folks, with the people at Tennessee, and vice versa. Like it's been as far as the culture goes, I could not be a better fit. Oklahoma fits right in with these other fan bases.
Auburn fans were really cool, really nice. The energy was awesome. The pregame stuff they do is rad. That energy was loud, and
Yes, it was.
I don't always get to experience the full weight of all of that because I'm always in the press box.
Mhm.
But I mean, it just sounded deafening. I know you were on the field,
Yeah.
but it was just
I'll put it this way. Typically at Oklahoma, because I'm with the guns, like if you don't have any kind of ear protection on, it'll just ruin your ears. So typically I have um, AirPods in. I said no this time. I'm gonna just we're going in. We're gonna experience this to its fullest. Uh, Pretty different, man.
yeah.
Like Michael Hawkins, that first drive, that first play when he walked out, man. I mean, that was as loud as I can remember any stadium I've ever been in. It was incredible.
My favorite thing was, and again, I think when you cover enough of these games, that was my 44th game on the beat. So 44th OU game in a row to go to. And I think you watch these games enough that you almost kind of get a little detached from what's happening on the field because you're obviously looking at it from a work standpoint. But it
Right.
was so funny when Kip Lewis obviously got the pick six. And the energy, like the
I
press
must
box
have missed
energy,
that.
yeah, it wasn't that big. It wasn't that big of a deal. Didn't really have that much of an impact. Uh, the press box energy had definitely shifted a little bit when OU scored, and especially on the JJ Hester completion. But a lot of people, because it's Auburn's just like OU, where if you're in the press box, you can start going down to the field with about 7 minutes left in the fourth. And so a lot of people had already left, and I think part of it was because a lot of people assumed the game was over. I was one of those people. Even with the touchdown, I was skeptical. Even when it was 21-16, I was skeptical. It was so funny. Me and Tom Green from Sooners Illustrated were sitting next to each other, and there people were already going down. Like Ryan Chapman didn't even get to see the pick six. He was in the elevator when the pick six happened. Which sorry, I'm not trying to out Chapman at all, but like it was like that game was ugly and over. It looked like for
Yeah,
3 quarters.
it was.
But Tom and I, Kip snags the interception, starts running, and about 30 yards out from the end zone, it looks like he's going to score. And Tom and I didn't say anything. We literally just both started spamming backspace on the stories we had
Yep.
already written. And we're
Yep.
like, man, I just spent the last several minutes on this story that I'm writing, and
Yep.
gonna have to rewrite. Literally, there's nothing I can use from what I've written. What a crazy game, man.
The amount of stories that never saw readers that had to be completely redone. It's just covering Oklahoma. Like I feel for the Auburn folks. Like
That game was won. Auburn had it.
yeah, yeah. It was it took it took a collapse of impressive proportions for Oklahoma to get back in that game. And I mean, credit to them for hanging in there because it's not easy to do that in that kind of environment. But Yeah, that game was Auburn's to lose, and
Well,
they
and
did.
I'll say this, and it was the thing that probably everybody in the press box was annoyed that I kept talking about afterwards. And some pods already out there have already talked about it. I know Gabe and Teddy talked about it on theirs after the game, but I was stunned that Peyton Thorne threw the ball back-to-back incompletions in that fourth quarter. When OU turned the ball over on downs and Auburn opened the drive with a 22-yard run, I was like, okay, it's over. Like it's over.
Yes.
And Auburn, to their credit, controlled that game. And they were running the ball just well enough to keep in control of it. And when that drive started with a 22-yard run, I was like, okay, this defense is gone. It's beaten up. It's beaten up. They've been on the field too long. And I know when you go back and watch the film, the first incompletion that Peyton Thorne threw, it looked like Kip Lewis was going to blow it up in the backfield. So I get it. But like the one thing you cannot do in that situation, if you're Peyton Thorne and Auburn, is throw an incompletion.
Right.
And the second thing you can't do is throw another one.
Yeah.
Because even if those plays get blown up, which I don't think they would have, Auburn was running the ball pretty well in that second half.
Very physical.
Yeah. Yes, very physical. If nothing else, burn the clock.
Yep.
I was stunned. And also because the Auburn backup, that was their backup kicker also. I mean, that ball coming off the holder for all three of his field goal attempts, it was like a knuckleball. Like at no point, and I'm sitting, the press box was behind.
Yeah, you were in the corner. Yeah.
But we could see it, the kick kind of coming at us. And at no point during that 50-yarder, I was like, there's no way he's not gonna make this. Having said that, you need a little luck and to make a comeback like that. I know you made the plays it needed to make.
Yeah.
And the whole tone of the program and the game is completely different.
Yes.
If OU loses that game.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, we're talking
completely.
If you're 3-2 and coming off, if you're 3-2, but more importantly, 0-2 in SEC play, and you're about to face number 1 or number 2 Texas next week, yeah, I mean, this is as close to panic button as things would have been under Brent Venables at this point. I mean, even that 6 and 7 season to begin his tenure, like at this point, you've got your guys, and I just think the narrative would have just been awful had that game continued to go the way that it went.
Especially because again, everything that we had seen through 4 weeks, like outside of the Michael Hawkins run, the offense didn't do anything through the first 3 quarters. Now, part of that's penalties. They had a good drive in the third quarter that they had to settle for a field goal.
Yeah.
But OU had 192 yards going into the fourth quarter.
Yep.
And the defense was fine, but not amazing. And that was going to be the story of the game, was the defense didn't do quite enough to win the game, and the offense was, again, bad.
Right.
That was going to be the story.
Yep.
And now, yeah, I mean, the OU still has to play several teams in the top 15. Texas, Missouri, Bama, who looks like, I don't want it. I mean, Bama looks like
Terminator.
Legit. Yeah. Missouri, Ole Miss. And again, that Auburn game should have showed, which I don't think Auburn's not a bad team. They keep shooting themselves in the foot. Auburn's not a bad team.
Is a self-inflicted penalty, or like a self-inflicted wound walking. Like that's so talented at wide receiver, excellent playmakers at running back, and Peyton Thorne, whenever he's not making back, I mean, he carved up Oklahoma's defense, who was in good position more often than, I mean, even on the deep balls, Oklahoma's in good position.
Those were well thrown balls.
Yeah, just he played out of his mind for the 3.5 quarters.
The game plan through the first 3 quarters was phenomenal by Auburn, what they did.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, this goes to show, and I still don't even really know how good or bad Auburn is. I don't think they're a bad team, but it's hard because as much as we say, you're exactly right about areas where they're good, you still have to not shoot yourself in the foot. to be a good
Correct.
team.
Right.
But that game should go to show that even though Missouri is not a juggernaut, Ole Miss is not a juggernaut. Those are still on the road going to be really hard games to win.
Yep.
So all that being said, OU did win the game, and they're 4-1, and things feel a hell of a lot better for OU compared to if they've lost that game. But with this much needed bye, because OU has a billion players injured, OU might get Deion Burks and Taylor Tatum back next weekend. But outside of that, I don't know if anybody else is going to come back. This has been the most weird and confusing injury situation that I've seen in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're 5 games in. OU has 7 games left. And this is about as good of a time as any that we're going to get a chance to do a midseason review of sorts. And Parker and I touched on it a little in Quick Slants yesterday. We did offensive grade, defensive grade, special teams grade. Well, Bryan, we thought that you and I could go a little bit more deep, could go deeper. We could do position group by position group, give out grades, talk about what we've seen through the first 5 weeks. And not only is this sort of the midseason review of sorts, but I think we can talk about a lot of things that have happened through the first 5 weeks that we think will tell the story of the last 7 weeks of the regular season. So, Bryan, I told you we're going to go position group by position group. We're going to draft. So if you have a group you really want to talk about, I suggest you draft it. And I will do the same because I love drafts. People who listen to the Oklahoma Drill pods.
Get my draft board here ready to go.
Get your draft board. I'm sure people out there are going to agree with everything that we say and every grade that we give out. So that'll be fun to see too. But Bryan, I'm going to give you the first pick, as I told you that I would. I do not know what you're going to pick, and I do not know what grades you have given out for each position group. So this will be just as much fun for me as it is for anyone else. Bryan, you get the first pick in the position group mid-season review draft. Hit me with it.
First group is the defensive line.
Ooh, I thought you were going to go O-line. D-line.
Defensive line is the first group that I'm going with. And I'm giving them an A. I think they deserve an A. That is coaches don't give A pluses. There's always room for improvement. Always will be. That's just the nature of the game. But what we have seen from Oklahoma's defensive line rotation, that includes the ends, who I've been so impressed with. I mean, our Mason Thomas, like, his name's starting to get thrown around now, like one of the better pass rushers in the SEC. I mean, he's like listed, he's right up there near the top in sacks. He deserves it, dude. Like, when Oklahoma's defense has been able to get their opponent into an obvious passing situation, he has been a menace. And in the pick six piece that I did yesterday over on OUinsider.com, there was he had back-to-back sacks. It's just, I mean, we saw this in the Tulane game. It's the same situation, just, a little bigger scale, obviously now. He is impossible to beat off of the first step. It is incredible how much space he makes up, how much ground he makes up with that first step. It's terrifying. And he did it against a left tackle and a right tackle, which is very impressive that you're able to do that, not just at all, but on back-to-back plays. So he's been great, though. Trace Ford has kind of, over the last couple of weeks, to me, with him being more of a stand-up edge guy, incredible. PJ is coming along. That guy is, he hasn't made the impact that people expect yet, but there is no doubt that he is getting better and better as the weeks go along, as he gets more and more comfortable and more healthy. We're starting to see some more flashes. But I mean, and I don't want to leave Ethan Downs out either, because he's as steady as they get. Like, he's been exactly what you want, setting an edge, and has done a really good job there. But I think the real stars of the show have been the guys on the interior. Like, they're not going to get a lot of credit because a lot of times the stat sheet doesn't really show up for those guys. It's when your linebackers like Kip Lewis and Danny Stutzman and Kobe are having great seasons. Like there's a reason why those guys are having standout seasons. It's because they're able to run free. Dejon Terry has been incredible. Like
Mhm.
he's been so much better than he was last year. And he was a good
Mhm.
player last year, but he has taken a step where, you know, it's hard to keep him off the field. Dominic Williams has been exactly what you wanted him to be. Um, and I think Jaden Jackson has proved he obviously deserves to be out there. Grayson Halton has been just a problem whenever you're in passing down situations. And the most impressive thing, and I think this is probably a tip of the cap to Coach Bates, the motor that those guys play with, man, like
Mhm.
I mean, we're late in the fourth quarter, and it's because you've got a rotation that you do that they're able to have the juice still. But I can't even count how many times a play outside the box is being made, and it's a defensive tackle that has followed the ball and stayed in pursuit. Like they've been incredible, man. Like I could sit here and talk about them for the entire podcast. I'm giving them an A. Um, it's been a really really impressive group.
Love it. I think you covered everything really well. I just want to add a couple of things to what you said. Not only do I think that the defensive line has been impressive, but I think we've seen what opposing offenses have tried to do because the defensive line has been so good, particularly in pass rush, which is not obviously pass rush, linebackers, safeties, like everybody can have a piece of that. But OU's top 10, according to Pro Football Focus and pass rush grade, they're top 10 in sacks. They're top 10 in tackles for loss. OU is defending 40 rushing attempts per game. That's inside the top 30 for the most rushing attempts defended
Yeah.
through the year. And it's not because opponents are running the ball very well. I mean, OU's I think 30th in rushing defense. They're top 15 in yards per carry. They're only giving up 2.6 yards per carry. So
Mhm.
it's not because opponents have had so much success running the ball. I think it's because they are terrified to have their quarterback drop back into
Yeah.
obvious passing situations. I think we're seeing clearly that opponents do not like they want to get up, they want to try to be as physical as possible and control the tempo because if they start throwing the ball, we see exactly what happened to Peyton Thorne.
Yep.
R. Mason Thomas, when it's an obvious passing down, nobody can stay in front of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
You've heard it for 3 off seasons, but like you almost get fatigue from here. Like if that sounds because he just was never able to stay healthy enough. But now that you're seeing it, my goodness.
yeah,
I mean, best pass rusher for Oklahoma since Eric Stryker. Like pure pass rusher.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's been incredible.
So my grade is going to be a B plus, which is, I mean, I can't disagree with your A grade. If I'm trying to be super nitpicky, it's going to be because I don't think the depth has fully been there yet. Um, Really, on the interior, it's been Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson, Grayson Halton, and Dejon Terry. Haven't really seen much else outside of them. I thought that rotation would be a little bit bigger, but I mean, David Stone has barely played. Devon Sears has barely played. Ashton Sanders has barely played. So I think both on the interior, then at DN, like R. Mason Thomas has been fantastic. Caden Willer has made some plays. You mentioned Ethan Downs is about as steady as they come. But we haven't seen like PJ has only played 47 snaps this year. So I don't think the depth has been there, and I think they're going to need more depth through the rest of the year. So that's the main reason why I'm knocking them. But I think we're going to see a lot more PJ, and I think OU's just going to have to rotate more. Um, Look for PJ to make a bigger impact over the second half of the season. So you give him an A. I think that's a good mark. I'm going to give him a B plus because it can always get better, Brian.
Love it.
It can always be better. I'm going to go to Oh man, this is so tough. I thought for sure you were going to pick the offensive line. I was banking on you picking the O line. I'm going to go with the running backs. And because we're going to talk about the offensive line, I'm going to try to limit how much we talk about the O line and just talk about the running backs.
Okay.
Brian, there's no real way to spin it. The running back room just hasn't been very good. And think about how much has changed since what we thought of the room going into the year.
Yeah.
Gavin Sawchuk isn't just not no longer the starter. He's not the second guy. He's the third guy. He played against Auburn only because Taylor Tatum was out. He logged one carry and it didn't count because of a penalty on Jake Roberts. They're just and I don't even know how much of it is Sawchuk's fault because that run, the one run he had looked good, was by far his best run of the year.
Yep.
And unfortunately for him, it didn't count. But the efficiency, God, I can't talk. The efficiency just hasn't been there. I mean, they're averaging 3.7 yards per carry, 3.7.
Hmm.
It's just, I mean, it's just not good enough. Like honestly, it's just not good enough. This is a rushing offense that's been below 100th nationally all year. The 3.7 yards per carry is 93rd in the country. And I think so. OU has been content to really run Javonte Barnes. Javonte Barnes has looked a lot better than he did last year. You have to give him credit for that. But to me, there's just a disconnect. I think if there's any bigger example of the disconnect between play calling, coaching, and execution on the field, it's the run game. That has been by far, because if you go back and watch the film, there were opportunities against Auburn and Tennessee that were not taken advantage of. And I think it's a mix of things, but I don't think the vision from the running backs has been particularly good. And I also don't think the play calling has been necessarily conducive to the strengths of this running back room. One positive has been Taylor Tatum, who has been the most explosive running back through 5 weeks, even though he didn't play last weekend. You were spot on your analysis of him coming into the year. I think he's this team's best running back. I don't know if it's that close. He leads all the running backs in yards per carry. He's averaging over 6 yards a carry. The impressive stat is that he leads them in yards after contact, 3.6. Yep. He's been making something out of nothing. Pass protection has not been fantastic. You would expect that from a true freshman, but the passing game work is there. His explosiveness in the running game, just to be able to make guys miss, has been there. He had 3 carries for 14 yards against Tennessee before he got knocked out. I think he was going to have a big impact in that game before he got hurt. So that's one positive. And the other positive is Javonte Barnes looks like he's running hard. He's running really hard on every play. I just don't know if the vision has been there. Michael Hawkins should be able to help this running game moving forward to some degree. But I'm a little worried about how much success OU is going to have if they have run the ball like they have so far. It just hasn't been good enough. So overall, I'm going to give the running back room, I'm going to give them a D+ because it just hasn't been good. The efficiency hasn't been there. The production hasn't been there. And I think it'll get better if Taylor Tatum stays healthy. And quite honestly, I don't think OU is going to win very many games down the stretch if Taylor Tatum doesn't play a big role. Yeah. So D+, that's my grade.
Okay.
What say you?
I've got a lot to say on this group. First and foremost, give credit where credit's due. Yes, Javonte Barnes is running a lot with a lot more authority. Running a lot harder this year. You can tell he's not hobbled. Sometimes he's running a little bit too hard. And I'll get into that a little bit more into that in a bit. The guy with the biggest toolbox in this group is Taylor Tatum. Like he's got the speed, he's got elusiveness, he's got vision. The only thing he doesn't have is experience. Like as soon as he is able to plug in and really be a big part of this offense, I do think that it elevates the ceiling of the offense. He just has that. He has the it factor. There's a reason why he was a 5-star, number one overall running back in the class. He's he's it like that. That's what you want when you're looking for a running back. Gavin Sawchuk, um, yeah, got to be frustrated. Like if you're Gavin Sawchuk, you have to be frustrated because the success that you had last season to end the year had a good off season by all accounts. Um, and it's just not culminating in anything on the field right now.
1.8 yards per
Yeah.
carry.
So, and
1.8.
that's kind of where I'll jump into this. I think the reason why, let me put it this way. If Oklahoma's offensive line was a Joe Moore award contender, best one of the better offensive lines in the country, you didn't have issues creating space. I think Gavin Sawchuk would still be your RB1. Because when he's given space, when he's given opportunity, he's a nightmare. Like the guy is a nightmare when he gets to the second level. There are just not very many guys out there that can hit top speed the way that he does when he gets in the open field. He's a burner. Problem is his size kind of plays a factor in it, and he's just not great at breaking tackles. That's just not his strong suit. And so when you have an offensive line that is not providing you a whole lot of space before contact, you're just not going to be successful. Like it's pretty simple. Um, and that's why Tatum has been better. I mean, he's forcing more missed tackles. The thing with Javonte Barnes, and you touched on this a little bit, is he's running so hard, but I almost feel like if he could pull the reins back just a little bit when he gets the ball in his hand, and if he could just survey what's going on, there are opportunities in the running game to be had. Uh, one of the biggest plays that stood out to me uh, against Auburn late in the fourth quarter. Oklahoma has forced a turnover on downs after R. Mason Thomas has back-to-back sacks, and I believe it's a 2nd and 13 is the play, um, and they run this split zone look. Everybody's working one way, tight ends coming across the formation, blocking the backside defender, and the play side A gap comes wide open because Branson Hickman lets the tackle cross face and carries him upfield. Javonte Barnes decides to bury his head in Bauer Sharp's back and gets tackled for a gain of 2. If you pause, if you pause the video, if you pause the film and look, I could have parallel parked my car in the hole that happens that's just right there. And there's not anybody for 10 yards, and it's Barnes versus a safety to the pylon. They got man coverage on the outside. Cornerbacks have their back to the ball, not paying attention. And I mean, it's a touchdown. It's a touchdown, or the game is over. Just solely on the fact that they wouldn't have any time left. You've got your first down, the game is over. But instead, you get tackled for a gain of 2. Oklahoma kicks the field goal a couple of plays later, and then Auburn has a chance to win the football game. They weren't able to capitalize on that because the defense played well, but against a better team, that might cost you. Those are yards. Those are things that you have to be able to see. And that's not the only example. We've seen it a bunch over the last 2 weeks. And so my closing remark on this before I give a grade, if it wasn't for Jackson Arnold, if it wasn't for Michael Hawkins, I don't even want to know what the stats would be in the running game, because the running backs outside of a few plays from Taylor Tatum, uh, they just haven't been impressive whatsoever. It's been a hard go. It's been a hard go at it. I know the offensive line's had its struggles. I'm going D minus. It's been for me, it's been as bad as it could potentially be, and it started all the way back at Temple. Like it started all the way back against a bad football team, and it's really frustrating to sit and watch and hear how much grief the offensive line catches from the general fan base when a lot of the times they've blocked it up pretty freaking good and the hole's right there and they just don't see it. So I'm going D minus. It's been bad.
I feel like I should clap. I feel like I should applaud you. Couldn't have said it any better. I will. My last thing before I give it back to you is crazy that I think running back and wide receiver were two of the position groups that had the most confidence going into the year, and it just has not
Yeah.
panned out that way. Brian, gonna give you the next pick. Who are you going
Well,
with?
let's just jump right into O line. Like that's
Yeah,
I think we should just jump right into that.
I like it.
It's an easy segue because we just got done talking about the running backs. So offensive line outside of wide receiver, offensive line's been banged up all season long. Um, I think the best way, the fairest way that I can grade this unit is over the last 2 weeks, considering we've had pretty much the group that they went out there
Yeah,
last couple of weeks, and so it wasn't good against Temple, it wasn't good against Tulane, it wasn't good against Houston, but over the last couple of weeks, I've seen quite a bit of improvement. Now, this is by no means been a unit that's playing up to the standard that they expect. That's kind of a given. They're not getting a ton of separation, or they're not getting a ton of movement in the running game. Um, Anytime there's a 4 or 5 man rush, there's not a lot of time for the quarterback. Like they're not holding up incredibly well. You're almost forced to have a tight end or a running back in the box to help um, with pass protection right now. That being said, as crazy as it sounds, the offensive line over the last 2 weeks has probably been like your most consistent position group on the offensive side of the ball. Like it sounds insane. I only say this because I have watched each of those games back numerous times. And there's stuff there. There's opportunities there. There's opportunities for uh quarterbacks to make throws. There's opportunities for things to happen in the running game. It's not pretty. It's not. I mean, there are so many instances where a guy gets beat and it just looks awful. Like Michael Tarquin this week got beat by 35 by McLeod for a sack on Hawkins, and it looks terrible. But I mean, for the rest of the game, every other play, he looks pretty good. He does a pretty good job, and so um, I'm going to give him a C plus. I'm going to give him a C plus. I
that,
thought B minus. Um, but I just think that the offensive linemen at Oklahoma, they've almost surpassed the expectation that you have at a place like Wisconsin. Probably right there with what you expect from a place like Alabama. Uh, Oklahoma is a place where offensive line play is held to a high standard. It just is, and that's a good thing. That's why you're able to go out and get guys uh, that they have. The problem is the unit just has not performed to the level that they need to for the offense to be breaking in a freshman quarterback behind this offensive line is just a tough task. It's hard. Um, they've been suitable. Uh, they've been okay. Good isn't a word that I would use overall, but I mean They've been average. It's been an average unit.
You're the O-line guy. I trust your opinion more than I trust my own. I almost want to give it an incomplete. There are two position groups
That
that
would
I
be fair.
want.
Yes.
I almost want, there's two position groups, spoiler alert, both on the offense that I kind of want to give an incomplete to. I do feel like the O-line is one of them because here's what I know. Here's what I know. The Auburn game was the first time that we saw the five that Bill Bedenbaugh wants to play and where he wants to play them.
Yeah.
He wants to play Jacob Sexton at left guard. That's just where he wants to play him. And he wants Jake Taylor at right tackle. That's like he wants that fivesome of Tarquin, Sexton, Hickman, Wee Woo, Taylor. They played all but 2 snaps. Logan Hallen came in for 2 snaps because someone lost their helmet.
Yep.
But otherwise, they played the entire game. No Heath Ozida. No Troy Everett, which we'll see. Obviously, he hasn't been fully healthy most of the year. But no Eddie Pierre-Louis. No Josh Bates. Like, that's the fivesome he wants to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the results were fine.
Yeah.
I think in some ways as good as you could have expected, given that that was the first game they've played together. Still not good enough. But I don't think it was a catastrophe. I think the one thing that I would push back on is I don't think the O-line has been a catastrophe.
Yeah.
There's a fine line between it's horrific and it's not good enough.
Yeah.
There's a fine line.
Yes.
And I think OU's offensive line has been somewhere in there. And I do think like what we're seeing offensively, the struggles comes from like, because you're right. There's opportunities to be made that haven't, and plays to be made that haven't been made. Part of that is, again, like those opportunities aren't there enough. And then when they are there, the running back's not taking advantage,
right,
or the quarterback's not taking advantage. So right. There's almost, and they're just, if anything, this offense hasn't looked comfortable all year.
Right.
And I think you can't look any further than the offensive line having injuries. And I don't think this O-line was ever going to be amazing to begin with. It just wasn't. But
right.
This bye week, I think we're going to find out a ton about this offensive line against Texas because they've got one game under their belt. And now you've got the bye week.
Yes.
To heal up and prepare for Texas.
Yep.
And again, this is what I said last week. I don't think it's reasonable to expect OU's offense to become even average. I'm not saying that can't happen, but given how bad the statistics are, and this offense had 10 points through three quarters last weekend at 192 yards.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of ground between where they're at and average. I don't think it's reasonable to expect this offensive line to become great. But they can be better, and I think we're going to learn that against Texas. And the last thing I'll throw in is, again, pro football focus should not be gospel, and this is not factoring in running backs missing opportunities or quarterbacks putting themselves in tough positions. But run blocking grade 128 on the year, 128th nationally. And a part of that, again, they're also factoring in running back blocking, tight end blocking. So it's not just the O-line, but 128th in run blocking. I think they're in the 90s in pass blocking, 84. So, but now you've got your offense. You've got Michael Hawkins at quarterback. You got your O-line. Let's see what happens after the bye week. So I'm going to say, I'll give it a grade. I'll say D+. But it more so incomplete.
Okay.
That's what I'll say. Okay, my position group. So we've gone 2 offensive, so I'm gonna go defensive, and I'm gonna say the cornerbacks. I'm gonna go to the cornerbacks. And I don't know if there's a ton to say here. It's been the weakest position group on the defense by far. Not horrific, but not great. If there's one downside, if there's one thing this defense has not been great at so far, it's pass defense, specifically giving up explosive plays. They're 93rd in yards per completion, giving up almost 13. We've seen the vulnerabilities in this secondary. And now part of that, you have to give some credit to Tennessee and Auburn and Nico and Peyton Thorne for making those plays. But you look at the secondary grades or the pass coverage grades against Auburn. So Kip Lewis was number one. Obviously, the pick six helpful in that. Eli Bowen was by far the best cornerback graded. Not even close.
That checks out.
Yep, not even close. Kenai Walker was bad. Des Malone was better, but not great. Woody Washington hasn't been good enough. Just hasn't been. And I think his lower snap counts show that to some degree.
Yeah.
34 snaps against Auburn. 34. And that comes with Kendall Dolby being out.
Hanging it, cheated.
Yeah. And Gentry. He had a 53.3 coverage grade against Auburn. And I think you can see it, just the eye test.
Yeah.
Like, especially with the injuries, they need Woody Washington. Yeah. And it just hasn't been there. So I don't think it's been horrific. I think there's been good moments from this secondary. Kenai Walker has made plays and is like an inch away from making other plays, and then sometimes gives up really, really bad plays, really, really big plays. I think so I'm going to give the cornerback room a C. And mostly because I think it's obviously the area that opposing offenses are going to target.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's hard because Woody hasn't been great and Gentry Williams is hurt. And I think when Gentry Williams is healthy, he's the best cornerback on this team.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect him back anytime soon. So I think in response to that, I think you're going to have to play Eli Bowen a lot more, play Kenai Walker a little bit less, and hope Woody Washington finds his footing. Yeah. So I'm going to say a C. What say you?
Yeah, so I'll kind of piggyback off of some of that. Kenai Walker is really, really good in two situations. He is really good when the field is condensed, so like in red zone coverage, because he has length, he's got size, and in those short spans, he's able to keep pace with some of those quicker guys, and so he's just able to make up ground, and does really well. The other time that he is great is when he's got safety help over the top. If he's got somebody that can help him over the top and really limit the window, he's really good. Problem is when offenses scheme to get him by himself against a speedier wide receiver. And look, the guys that Tennessee and Auburn have at wide receiver are, really good. Those are really good groups. Cam Coleman's going to be a freak. If you didn't see him chase down Kip Lewis, who's a fast guy by himself, if you go back and watch Cam Coleman chase him down, it's DK Metcalf.
I was going to say it's like Metcalf.
But yeah, and I think where you get in those situations is Kenai Walker has been picked on in those spots because you really have the offenses have been forced to capitalize there against him. And so, he's been better than he was last year as far as like being in position. I think he's got a lot better understanding, but I just think you get him an open space. He's a lot better zone corner than he is a man corner. That's the best way of putting it. Eli Bowen, man, he's going to be, he has such a high ceiling. I know that he's not the physical specimen that his brother is, and that's why he wasn't as highly recruited, but ball in the air, he's probably your top corner. I trust his ball skills as much as I do any other corner in the room. He just has that natural instinct. So really like the emergence of him. It does suck that Gentry has not been able to be out there for this team. He's got the combination of speed and size that you want. Um, I think Des Malone's been good. Uh, there were a couple of times against Auburn where he might have had an interception if he had another split second. But you kind of live in those margins at this in this position. Like that's how it is. The guys were in position against Auburn. They really were. It was just either a really good ball or a great play from the wide receiver. And you get beat sometimes. Like that's just the nature of that position. So overall, for corners, I think I'm right there with you. I think C is like is that just a straight C is probably good because as you said, they're gonna try and attack you downfield. As active as the safeties are in the run fits, you do leave your corners on islands um, more often in this kind of defense. And so I think with that being said, they've played well. There have been some things given up. I think a C is a perfect grade.
Hit me with your next one.
All right, so we've done 2 and 2, so I can just go. I can go wherever I want on this one. Um, let's go quarterback.
All right, go
Let's talk
quarterback.
quarterback.
Okay.
Um, this is like one of those 2 grade situations almost
Yeah.
because you've got 2 guys that have played primarily. Look, Jackson Arnold coming into the season um, was being touted as a dark horse, Heisman contender. Uh, Fans have an incredibly high expectation set for him. If for nothing else, he's a quarterback at OU. He's supposed to make incredible plays. Like that's just what this program has been known for. Um, all of that uh, is pressure by itself. But after the performance in the Alamo Bowl last year, you saw 2 things from Jackson. You saw his explosiveness, like what he is capable of, but you also saw that kind of gunslinger mentality that made him who he was in high school. Uh, it can put the ball in harm's way. Unfortunately for him, and I don't know this because I haven't talked to the kid. Unfortunately, it feels like the turnovers, the being afraid to put the ball in harm's way, has almost caused him to do just that. Because it's just as much a mental game as it is a physical game, especially at quarterback. And we've seen this time and time again. Guys have the physical tools. They have all the they have. I mean, he's exactly what you want in a modern quarterback. Like he fits the mold of a modern quarterback perfectly. Just tall enough, has great mobility, a live arm. Dude can make any throw on the field. Um, he can throw off script. Like he's got it. The problem is right now he's broken between the ears. Like there are just so many reads, even in the run game. There are reads uh, in that first half against Tennessee. He's handed the ball off I mean, it's very similar to what he did in high school. He's handed the ball off and made the right reads all these years, and then all of a sudden he can't. And to me, that just says he's broken between the ears at the moment. Like, and I don't want to I don't want to just pour on the kid because it's a tough situation to be in. Like there's name five positions in football in college football that have more pressure on them than being the quarterback at OU. You can't. Like
Mhm.
I mean, that's it. And so, um, for him, I think I just have to go D for Jackson. Like the expectations were there. We saw some good things, but I mean, really outside of the throw to Farouk in the first game, there just wasn't anything that stood out that was really positive as far as pushing the ball down the field. So now Michael Hawkins, we've only got 6 quarters to go off of. Um, he's got a bright future, man. And hearing Joe Tessitore say, that we're watching a star be born right here in front of our eyes in the broadcast after his flip into the end zone for the 2-point conversion, like maybe a little premature, but at the same time, what more could you ask for from a freshman in his debut? He goes 10 for 16 or 10 for 15. Um, would have had a much bigger day if a couple of plays hadn't been called back because of penalty. Um, he didn't put the ball in harm's way. He had so much poise in the pocket, uh, especially on the road, and as loud as it was, I was just so impressed with him against Auburn. Uh, there were some times when he missed guys, like there were opportunities missed. He does leave the pocket a little bit early, gets happy feet. I can't blame him. The offensive line has been up and down. Um, but the biggest thing was to me, he made the plays that were there for the most part, didn't put the ball in harm's way, and then in crunch time, uh, he makes his throw to JJ Hester was the second best throw of his all day. The first would have been to Bauer Sharp over the middle, um, when Roberts gets called for OPI, or whatever they called him for. That ball, I mean, he zipped it. Window wasn't very big, and I mean, that would have been just a huge play. OU was up 7-0, about to be set up in the red zone. Um, but he's had the ability to make the throws, and that was really impressive. So for him, for Hawkins, I would go B plus. Like it's been really good. I don't know really what you could expect more from a freshman quarterback. And really, I think the only thing that you can hold against him right now is he doesn't know what he doesn't know. And so like you're kind of limited as to what you can do offensively. But I've been really impressed, like with the mental acuity, with what he's seeing, how quickly he's seeing and making decisions. And then obviously, dude's a burner. Like you're gonna have to spy him if you're defending him, because he can really hurt you with his legs, as he showed. Yeah, I'd go B plus for Hawkins.
You said everything about Jackson Arnold, and I'll just add about Hawkins. To me, and again, part of this discussion is coded by the fact that they won the game. But to me, it played out about like it should have been expected to play out. Hawkins coming into the game did not turn this offense into a juggernaut.
Nope.
There's just too many injuries and too many structural issues for that to have happened. Again, outside of that touchdown on the first drive, the rest of the first half, OU had 63 yards.
Yep.
So, and they didn't score in the offense. I mean, they scored a field goal in the second and third quarters. You're right. And there's plays, if you go back and watch the film, a couple shots he missed, a couple throws he'd like to have back. A couple times he bails on passing plays. You mentioned the happy feet. That was something that stood out to me in the press box, as he gets a little happy feet at times. Good Lord, that's nitpicking stuff, considering a true freshman in the first SEC road game in that kind of environment with all of the things that are wrong with this offense, not to mention he had a week to prepare. I mean, and the fact that the running game has not been successful. There's nothing for him to fall back on. So I think it's ultimately come down to two things. One, his ability to make plays when there's not a play to be made. The first touchdown run, his ability to scramble and run is huge for this offense. It's like Taylor Tatum being the best at yards after contact. It's kind of the same thing with Hawkins. Just being able to make stuff when there's not something there. He did that several times. That throw down to JJ Hester was the buildup of missing plays and there being plays to be made. And then in a critical moment when it had to be there, he makes the throw. And that was a dime.
Yes, it was.
That's a dime.
Could not have been placed better.
Nope. And then the second thing is just the intangible heart, which is as cliche as it is to say, but
that's
the flip against Tennessee, the flip on that 2-point conversion against Auburn. That was a huge play in the game. Huge play. That wasn't just style points. OU
Yeah.
going up 3 right there was massive.
Yep.
Massive. And that's the kind of, I mean, I think it was Billy Bowman. I don't want to, it was either Billy Bowman or Kip Lewis. I apologize. One of those two retweeted the clip of that. And the context was a guy you can rally behind. And when you see your quarterback make those type of plays, your true freshman quarterback make those type of plays, it gives the defense confidence. Man, did you see the sideline on that touchdown on the first drive of the game?
Yes.
They were
Lit.
ecstatic.
Yeah. I mean, it was a party.
Yeah. And I think when you assume one, the injury situation just probably isn't going to be perfect, especially at wide receiver. This offense isn't going to become a juggernaut by the end of the year. It's just not. So I think when you factor in those things, it's like, okay, well, what can you rally behind? And I think you can rally behind those type of plays. If you're a defense, if you're a team, if you're a coaching staff, it gives you something to build on. So again, bye week's huge for him. Gives him a weekend off, gives him time to prepare, gives Seth Luttrell hopefully some time to restructure this offense a little bit around him specifically. Hasn't been perfect. He still only finished with 160 passing yards. And yes, I know the injuries at wide receiver are bad. Average 3.6 yards per carry. Again, like good. There's some good stuff there, but not incredibly efficient. So all that, I'm going to give him a B, which given the state of this offense, it's pretty high grade.
Yeah.
And he's a true freshman. Pretty high grade.
Yep.
I'm going to go. Let's go ahead and talk about the wide receivers. Let's go ahead and talk about the wide receivers. And again, I think it's an incomplete. It's the offensive line and wide receivers really deserve an incomplete. The fact that they were missing their top 5 receivers against Auburn is staggering. I mean, it's easy to just trug along in the bowels of a season as it wears on. Let's not forget that OU is without its top 5 receivers in their first road game of the year.
5.
Not 1, not 2. And one of those guys accounts for 31% of the receptions by the entire team. Receivers, running backs, tight ends. Nearly a third of every ball that's been caught this year has been Deion Burks. It's just, I mean, he's been their whole offense and he was not there against Auburn. Having said that, all we can do is evaluate what we've seen on the field. And we were touting the depth of this team going into the year, of this wide receiver group going into the year. We just haven't really seen that yet. Jaquays Petaway had a really good second half against Tennessee, was a non-factor against Auburn. J.J. Hester, incredible fourth quarter play, led the team in receiving yards against Auburn. Huge. Just hasn't, but outside of that, just hasn't really stepped up. There, just outside of Deion Burks, there just hasn't been another guy that has stepped up. Zion, Raggins, fantastic. I mean, the amount of snaps he's getting for a true freshman who gives up that much size difference to most of the guys he's blocking on the perimeter and trying to run routes against is admirable.
Yeah.
Brennan Thompson, I think, is a guy that is probably suffering the most from missed opportunities because there are plays where he's open
right
down the field.
Yep.
And the throws just haven't been there.
Yeah.
I don't think he's been amazing, but he just hasn't been super productive, and I don't think it's all his fault. So anyways, again, if we're only evaluating what we've seen and with the context of the injuries and the struggles on offense, this is still an OU team that's averaging 9.9 yards per completion. That's 113th in the country. There just hasn't been. They had 2 pass plays against Auburn that went for 15 yards or more. 2.
And both of them were Hester.
Both of them were Hester. And they're just, I mean, there just hasn't been the pop. Defenses haven't been afraid of OU's passing offense. And OU hasn't done enough to make them pay. And again, that's evidenced by Jackson Arnold being 12 of 36 on passes with a target depth of 10 yards or more. I mean, they're 107th in passing offense. So giving it, obviously, with the injuries and that we're not seeing the passing attack at all that we would see if this offense was healthy. Factoring that in, still, it's more of an incomplete, but I don't know how you give this passing offense more than a D.
Yeah. No,
That's what
I
I'd
mean,
say.
I'm right there with you. I think this is the one grade on the team that I would say it really is almost impossible to put a grade on it. Um, you're barely seeing. I mean, how look no further than the fact that you've got guys like Zion Raggins and Zion Kearney playing more snaps than they've really needed to, more snaps than they've been ready for. They were playing high school football last year, and they're thrust in this situation of, I mean, pretty much being part of the starting rotation. Just because you don't have bodies, like you just don't have guys that are able to be out there, and that's tough. As you said, Brennan Thompson. He had a couple of good plays against Auburn. That very first play, the screen to him, picking up 15 on that, like that just it kind of goes to show you what he is capable of. It just hasn't been there, and it's hard to look at wide receiver as a unit when you are just missing so many guys. I mean, because if like let's be honest, if Brennan Thompson is the third guy on the field that you're worried about, and I don't mean that as a slight. I hope that doesn't come off as a slight. If you've got Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson, uh, or if you've got Nick Anderson and Deion Burks out there, and then Brennan Thompson, those other guys have a totally different issue that they bring to the table for you if you're a defender. That's going to open up opportunities for Brennan Thompson to be running wide open. Now, he's really the only downfield threat that they have up until JJ Hester showed up, and they can bracket him. They can really shut him off on one side if they want to. And the fact of the matter is they haven't had to because they've been able to just dedicate one guy and bring everybody else in the box. So yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. I think you kind of give it a D, say it's incomplete, and move on because there's not a whole lot more to pull from that.
I believe we've got linebackers, tight ends, and safeties,
Okay.
and then special teams as a whole. I'm going to go ahead and parlay. I'm going to steal one of your picks. I'm going to go ahead and parlay that discussion into the tight ends, which I don't really have a ton to say about the tight ends, to be honest with you. Bauer Sharp has been genuinely effective as a receiver.
Yep.
And he's been a real part of this offense. And he had a couple plays against Auburn that would have looked really good if they didn't get called back because of injury or because of penalties. I don't think it's as atrocious as, again, like the offensive line. I don't think it has been atrocious. I think there have been some really bad moments. I mean, the Jake Roberts, Cade McIntyre back-to-back penalties in the fourth that led to that turnover on downs. I mean, you can't have that. I've heard some people complain about the Jake Roberts offensive pass interference on the long Bauer Sharp play in the first half. I disagree with that. I think it was pretty blatant. Offensive PI didn't even try to run her out.
You have to make it at least look like you're trying. I mean, everybody runs rub plays. You have to make it look like a route.
Yeah. He didn't, and like he got a late start to the route. It looked like he stumbled and then just went to block the guy instead of, but like, I'm not saying it was like the worst, like most egregious physical play ever, but they're going to call that every time. Yeah. They're just, so I know there was, anyways, that's my own personal soapbox. I thought they did a better job against Auburn of changing where Bauer Sharp was blocking. And I think accepting that Bauer's just probably not going to be the guy going up against a DN and one-on-one winning that battle.
It's just not. Yeah.
He's just not. I do think the group, despite there being a little bit more production in the passing game, and I do think Bauer is an important part of the offense in that regard, I do think it's fair to be disappointed in what we've seen. And sure. I think you would have wanted to have seen more. And I just don't think there's anything this tight end room has been particularly good at from top to bottom.
Yeah.
And the penalties, a lot of them have come from that tight end room. So I just don't think there's been a ton of development there. I don't think it's a strength of the team overall, and I'm gonna give it a D, somewhere between a D and a D plus.
Okay.
That's what I'm gonna give it. So
Yeah.
because there's been some good plays, Jake Roberts against Houston, Bauer Sharp's had some good catches, but I just think
Yep.
body of work hasn't been great. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. Bauer Sharp's coming off of his best game as a Sooner. I know he didn't score, but that was his best game. I think they set him up more for success
Yeah.
in that game. And maybe that's just him being like a safety blanket for a young quarterback. I don't know, but he's a mismatch problem and against linebackers and safeties. Like he's a little too big for a safety, a little too quick for most linebackers, and he has uh, good speed. And so I'm excited to see where that goes forward. But yeah, as you said, the penalties have just been inopportune. They've been, which penalties are never a good thing, but like you have them at the worst moments from the
They had
tight
10
end.
penalties against Auburn.
Yeah, 10 for
Yeah.
78. It was bad. It was bad. Um, and something I said on the post game podcast kind of like goes right into this. The offensive line, the communication on the road was fantastic. Michael Hawkins did a great job making sure everybody was on the same page. He didn't have a false start from an offensive lineman. It was all from wide receivers and tight ends. Like that's where the issue lies. And so for me, the Bauer Sharp's penalty he's moving forward and getting the touchdown pulled off the board, the reception for Javante Barnes, like he was moving forward.
I
It's
didn't love the call.
Yeah,
Didn't
it's
love the call.
we see it all over the place. Like that happens everywhere. Like obviously, yes, he was moving forward. If you want to call it, they're going to whatever. Um, but you should know better. Like you should know better. And I would say with that particular instance, with what we saw with Roberts, um, if those things continue to happen, I think that's when you actually have a real argument for what's Joe John Finley doing with this room, um, because those are coachable things that should not happen again. And I think that's pretty clear. And so yeah, I agree with you. You said D. Um, I'd go D plus, probably D plus. They're going to have to continue to be a big part of the offense. Um, just with the health of wide receiver. And if you take the penalties off the board, if you take all the penalties off the board, which again you're playing in a vacuum here, but if you take the penalties off the board in the last game, I mean that might be an entirely different outcome. Like it might look like a completely different game, um, and perhaps the grade's a lot better. But yeah, D plus.
I'll say to Bauer Sharp's credit, second on the team in yards, receptions 18, yards 159, and he has a touchdown. Got to give. I mean, that's not nothing.
Yeah,
Not nothing. I mean, Stogner. Did Stogner have 10 receptions last year? 10, I think.
I think so. Yeah,
Someone in the comments correct me, but I think it was 10. I think so Bauer Sharp's already almost doubled what Stogner gave him. So that is something. All right, we're down to two more position groups in special teams. Hit me with it.
Let's go
Yeah,
linebacker.
I love it.
I hate that this was Danny Stutzman's worst game of the year. Um, that we're grading off of this, and when I say that, he just maybe wasn't as physical in the hole. Now, credit Hunter from the running back for Auburn. I mean, dude's physical, runs behind his pads really well. Um, that being said, Stutzman was still all over the field, like still making plays, still right there. Um, I've been really, really impressed with what we've seen from Kobe McKenzie. The fact that he's been able to be in there, play Mike, allow Stutzman to play some Will, where he's a more natural fit. been really impressed with him. And then Kip
Kip Lewis is a
Lewis,
stud. He's going to be a star.
he's going to be so good.
He's going to be a
Like
star.
redshirt sophomore, dude is like he has such a high ceiling. And the scary part about it is he's only going to grow more. He's only going to become more physical, and he moves with incredible pace. And the guy has a motor. Like he is at 110% all the time. He has that, and that mentality is really what separates great linebackers from good ones, and he has that mentality. Um, we've even seen good things from Jaron Kanik this year, in spot situations where he's made some improvement. And so for the guys out there, uh, this has been a strong unit. This has been a strong spot for Oklahoma. They've done really well in pass coverage for the most part. Obviously, the biggest play of the year is Kip Lewis's pick six to this point. So, um, I've been impressed. I've been impressed with the looks that they're giving um, opposing quarterbacks. I mean, Peyton Thorne's played a lot of football, and he even said it on the podcast. 10 times out of 10, he would have made the same throw. And that's just
It was an
credit
incredible
to,
play by Kip.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's
Incredible
just
read.
credit. Yes, it's credit to one, the call, but two, the execution from those guys. I mean, it's just been awesome. So, um, I gave the D line an A. I think I'm going to go B plus on this one. Like I want to give them an A, um, but there have just been just enough little things that have happened, particularly in that last game, where I think there was more space than there probably should have been. There was more missed tackles than there probably should have been. Um, but yeah, it's been a good group. I'll give them a B plus.
This is the one time I might be more optimistic than you. I'm going to give him an A minus.
Okay.
And I think Auburn by itself was probably like a B. Probably until that Kip Lewis play, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think OU's run defense has been so good in part because the linebackers have been fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think the pass rush has been good in part because the linebackers have been so fantastic. Kobe McKenzie and Kip Lewis have been everything you needed them to be in year 3.
Yep.
Everything.
Yes, they have.
Fun fact, who is the second highest graded defender for OU in terms of coverage this year? Just take a guess.
Is it Kip Lewis?
Skip Lewis. He's been great in basically every area of the field. He has a low tackling grade, which is bizarre because I don't really think tackling's been that much of an issue for him. But either way, Kip Lewis and Kobe McKenzie, when they lead this defense next year, is going to be so fun. It's going to be really fun. I'm also going to throw in Kendall Dolby was fantastic before he got hurt, just throwing in the cheetah.
Yeah.
Kendall Dolby was fantastic. To come from a JUCO, which obviously no shade at NEO, but to come from a JUCO and then become like one of the most invaluable part of this defense, a good defense at OU is nothing short of remarkable.
Yeah.
Was fantastic. Sucks that he's gotten hurt, but in his place, Samuel Masigo, I've loved what I've seen from Samuel Masigo.
Yeah.
Love it.
And this group's only going to get better when Deshaun McCullough becomes a part of it. Like I think you've almost seen a lot of people forget the fact that he plays at Oklahoma and he's a legitimate difference maker. Those pass rush situations get even scarier whenever he's back on the field.
Yeah. So I'm going to segue in so I'm going to give that team or give that group an A minus. I'm going to segue Kip Lewis's great coverage grade into the safety room because guess who is the highest graded coverage defender on the defense? Not only highest coverage graded, guess who the highest graded defender is for OU this year? Highest overall grade.
That would be Broken Arrow Zone.
Robert Spears Jennings has been sensational.
Yeah.
In coverage, in run fits, and pass rush. He has been fantastic. Here are his PFF grades across the board. You ready for him?
Let's hear it.
Overall, 88.7. Run defense, 82.8. Tackling, 84.6. Pass rush, 85.4. Coverage, 87.2.
Mm.
He is the second highest graded tackler. He is the second highest graded rush defender. He is the fourth highest graded pass rusher, the highest graded in coverage, and the highest grade overall. He has been sensational. I mean, good enough that by the end of the year, if he keeps playing like this, he is going to rise up the NFL draft boards.
Big time. Yeah.
Big time.
Junior?
It's his third year. I think he's a true junior. I think he's a true junior.
I think he is too.
Yeah, because he I don't think he redshirted. Let me double check on that. That's something I should know.
He's either a junior or a redshirt sophomore. Yes.
Yeah. He's just been sensational. And then outside of that, Billy Bowman's been good. I think there's been a few tough moments, especially in that Auburn game. A couple of tough moments, but I think overall, Billy Bowman's been as just what you thought he would be. He's been really good. Peyton Bowen has dealt with some injuries. Didn't grade out particularly well against Auburn, but again, that's where I think you have to use the eye test to supplement PFF grades. I think Peyton Bowen's just been good.
Yep.
I actually think there's an argument that the secondary or that the safety room has been the best room in the defense. Or actually, let me back up. I honestly think it's probably the linebackers, but I think Robert Spears-Jennings has been the best defender through 5 games.
I would not argue with that.
He's got 2.5 sacks.
Him or R. Mason Thomas. There's been a couple of things from RMT but it's either one of the guys with an acronym for a 3-letter name there. So
yep, I'm gonna give him an A-.
Okay,
I think it's been great.
Yep, I'm gonna go A. I'm gonna go flat A on this. And I don't even remember who said it. And because I want to give them credit because it encapsulates what we've seen from Billy Bowman so well. It might have been Teddy Lehman. Anyways, the thing that makes Billy Bowman so special is that he is able to ride the line between doing exactly what he's supposed to do on the play and then seeing where something's going and breaking off.
It was Teddy.
That is such a good way of, because that
spot on.
That there are so many plays. I mean, a perfect example is the goal line stop against Texas last year. Like, that's not even really what Billy's supposed to be doing, but he sees where the quarterback's eyes are going and he goes to make the play. Like that it perfectly encapsulates what he is to this team. And that's when you start to see plays or units like this really take steps forward.
His help in the run defense and run fits has been fantastic. Billy Bowman's has.
Yes, it has.
So,
yeah, love what we've seen from him. I think just as Peyton Bowen becomes more healthy and more comfortable in this group, I think he's going to be well. He's well on his way to being really good. We haven't seen a lot from the younger guys yet, but I am really excited about what Michael Boganowski is going to be in this team. I think he is going to be an enforcer. Like he had one play. I believe he had one snap logged against Auburn. And on that play, I pointed this out, and I think Venables said something about it as well, and kind of made me chuckle because I was saying the same thing. He comes up into the run fit, and there's a tackle out in space coming to block, and he puts a tackle on his back, brings the hit to him. And this is a guy, I mean, he was playing high school football last year. Dude's a headhunter. He's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, that group's been fantastic. They've lived up to the hype.
The path time to big snaps just isn't there for Boganowski. But next year when Bowman's gone, Boganowski's going to play a lot.
Yep, and he is going to he will quickly become a name that people are familiar with, because he's going to make those kinds of plays that people don't forget.
Really fun thing I want to say before we get to the last position group. So I was on the field with Eric Bailey from the Tulsa World before the game, which that's the fun part about going to road games is press box people can actually be on the field pregame. We don't get to do that at OU. Um, Eric goes to hand his phone to somebody sitting right by the field to take a photo of the two of us, and I posted it on social. It was Billy Bowman Sr.
That's
and
awesome.
we didn't even realize it right away. But it was Billy Bowman Sr. and I think it was, forgive me, but I think it was Billy. I think it was Billy Bowman's uncle. I think it was the two of them, and we sat and talked to them for 5 minutes. It was super cool,
That's awesome.
super down to earth guys. Really, really fun. Got to talk to them about the team a little bit and just where Billy's at, and even Jada Coleman a little bit. So
That's
it was
cool.
fun. Those are cool moments. Special teams, Brian. I gave this grade to Parker, and I said what I kind of wanted to say about special teams, so I'll let you mostly take it. I think I said A minus, and because overall, 8 to 9 on field goals, overall between Schmidt and Keltner, you'll take that. Um, Peyton Bowen's going to break off a long run on a punt return at some point. It's going to happen. And I think just from top to bottom, special teams has not cost OU a game. Luke Elzinga has been fantastic. I gave more thoughts on that quick slants pod, but I think A minus, and given where this team was the last 2 years, it has been just a phenomenal improvement.
Yeah. I looked over to Parker during the Auburn game and said the hire of Doug Deacon. That's his name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freaking
I
with
thought so.
Deacon.
Yeah. Uh, that's going to have a lasting impact on this football team. I think if they are able to keep him, if they can keep him as a special teams coordinator at Oklahoma, that's going to become a strength for this team, and it already has. Like quietly, um, special teams won you the game against Houston,
Uh-huh.
just based on field position alone. Um, Luke Elzing has been a weapon, absolute field turner at punter. I mean, he's been great. He's been very, very
He's
good.
he's maybe been OU's best player.
Yeah, I mean, consistent from a consistency standpoint, yes.
Yeah.
Um, you're right on Peyton Bowen. We haven't seen it yet, but the flashes there, like it's going to set up at some point for him. It's just going to take a bad punt, or somebody line drive it to him to give him some space. But I mean, when he gets the opportunity, it's going to happen. Um, yeah, and then really for me, the most impressive thing that I've seen from them all season, Keltner was really good for the first few games. For Zach Schmidt to have the struggles that he did last year, for him to step in last week and make two huge kicks on the road, like the guy's not getting enough credit for that. That's a huge deal. Um, Special teams was a big reason why Auburn lost the football game.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't show up. Like obviously, everybody's going to point to the pick six. Everybody's going to point to, um, Michael Hawkins' the throw and all of that. Special teams was the difference. Those 6 points were the different in the game, and you had a 12-point swing based on uh, special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Two missed field goals, three, I guess, if you count the guy. If you count Magoo getting a second, a second chance at it before halftime. Um, it's 12-point swing, and that made the difference. So, yeah, I'm gonna go A minus as well. I think that's a really good. They've been it's been a strength. It's won them a couple of games, um, and I think as the year goes forward, if there are teams that might have the edge somewhere else, um, this is a great way to play equalizer on the road in a close game, and I think it's going to really play a factor for Oklahoma.
Special teams A minus. Give me your overall defense grade and your overall offense grade.
Defense, I'm going to go A minus. That's a, yeah, A minus. Offense, D plus,
I said D or D plus
D
on Quick
plus.
Slants. I said D or D plus.
Yeah, I think
I
D
mean, I
plus.
just by every statistical metric, this has been one of the worst offenses in football.
It has been. Yeah. And I know all the injuries, like injuries play such a key factor in that. But yeah, it's been certainly not what Oklahoma fans are used to. Um, when you look at the S&P Plus or FPI or anything out there that's measuring efficiencies, defense and special teams are being played at a championship level. They are good enough to compete for an SEC championship. The offense isn't. It's not. If they were to find a way to be average, you've got the makings of a winning football team. That's a problem. But as you said, average is a long way from where they're at right now on the offensive side of the ball. So got to get better there. But overall, yeah, A minus on special teams, A minus on defense, and D plus on offense.
I think I said special teams A minus, defense B plus, offense D or D plus. I think is what I said. And for the purposes of giving a finite grade on this pod, I'll say D for the offense. Give a D. Good thing the offense will have a tune-up game against number 2 Texas next weekend, so they'll be able to find a rhythm a little bit.
I from a play calling perspective, I'm going to make a hot take right here for those of you that have stayed on this long.
I was about to say this is the longest pod in
Yeah.
history.
I have a feeling that the play calling and the offensive performance from Oklahoma against Texas, while it may not produce the most points, is going to be the most promising and the one that's going to have the fan base feeling the best about things going forward to this point in the season.
I think we'll end it
Think,
there.
yep, I think they head in the right direction.
That's going to do it here on the Oklahoma drill. And I think this is our longest pod in our pod's history,
In
but
history.
also my favorite. A lot of good discussion.
Yes,
Really a lot of
I
good
agree.
points. Appreciate everybody staying in with us, listening to us, supporting us as always. You can always head over to ouinsider.com, become a VIP member today. Always make sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so here at the OU Insider YouTube channel. All kinds of content through the remainder of the year. I'm actually heading to fall softball tonight after football availability.
Nice.
All that fun stuff. But appreciate you guys as always following us along with us here on the Oklahoma drill. We'll be back next week to talk about Texas and what's sure going to be a fun trip to Dallas. We'll see. But thank you guys for tuning in again. We'll see you next week on the Oklahoma drill.